This is Champagne Problems, where we come together to explore the gray areas of drinking. This is a judgment-free zone where we can all take a look at how we make decisions about our relationship with alcohol. Welcome back, everybody. We've got a special episode today for many reasons. One, our producer and friend, Charlotte Cameron, will be joining me as guest host. We're in Brooklyn, New York, in a private studio, and to top it off, we've traveled up here to speak with entrepreneur, investor, and content creator Sahil Bloom. Sahil is managing partner at SWB, an investment firm that accelerates early startups, and he is most known for creating highly motivational content around wealth, performance, perseverance, and success. His content is delivered across multiple platforms, reaching over 1 million people weekly. We're about to get educated. Let's go to Sahil. Sahil Bloom, welcome to Champagne Problems.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be doing it in person, too, here in Brooklyn, New York.
I know. You took the words out. I was going to say we're sitting in beautiful Brooklyn, New York.
Beautiful, like 30 degrees.
30 and a little gray.
Nice and crisp. Nice and crisp.
Some trash on the streets.
Yeah.
Wonderful, man. Very glad you agreed to do this. Very excited to sit down with you and pick your brain on all things Sahil's wheelhouse.
Yeah, well, hopefully we have something to offer. I don't know. I can't promise anything already, but we'll see.
All right. All right, so we do a little rapid fire thing at the very beginning. We're going to fire off a few questions to get to know Sahil.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right,
baby.
let's get into it.
Here we go. What was your first live music concert and where?
Ooh, this is embarrassing. Fall Out Boy.
Yes! Oh, God.
Shoot, what year is this? Like probably, I don't know, 2003, 2004 in Worcester, Massachusetts.
Lovely.
Yeah, it was Fall Out Boy, Hawthorne Heights, and like some other embarrassing band that I was really into. That, by the way, like embarrassing at the time, like, like later kind of got embarrassed by it.
Right.
Now I'm back into that stuff. Like I'll listen to that
It's
while I
all
work
good
out.
now.
No issues.
Yeah.
Fall Out Boy, people stunt on them, but they're actually not bad.
You're standing by.
Don't sleep on Fall Out Boy.
All right. What comedy movie have you seen the most number of times?
Oh, Superbad. Easy.
Oh.
Superbad.
Roll right
Superbad,
off
by
the
the way, like is so freaking funny. And you couldn't make that movie today. This is like one of my issues with it. It's like Judd Apatow. Some of those movies that he made are unbelievably funny. Like the comedy, the dialogue is so good and so crisp and so funny. But some of the jokes, I just don't think you can make them in Hollywood anymore. With like how the Overton window has shifted.
No question. I think the majority of comedy movies from the past you cannot do anymore.
Yeah.
All right. What food is your guilty pleasure?
Ooh. Ben and Jerry's cookie dough ice cream.
Lovely.
All right.
Lovely.
What'll make you lose your temper?
My wife will tell you this one. Actually, two things. Number one, when simple technology things don't work, I get really, really annoyed, like unnecessarily annoyed and pissed off if like a simple thing just isn't working. And then number two, any notices from the IRS just piss me off.
Piss you off. I love it. What's the comedian's name where he talks about people getting mad at their phones? And he's like, it's got to go to space and back.
Well, Louis C.K. has an amazing one about Wi-Fi on planes. That's so funny. Where like you're on a plane and he has this whole bit of like you're literally in like a rocket going like 800 miles an hour, 30,000 feet above the earth, and you're pissed that your Wi-Fi doesn't work on the plane.
Bitching, right?
Yeah.
It's so good.
Love it. All right. So, what is your favorite view?
Favorite view
could be vacation,
No, I mean, I'm biased because this is a more recent one, but waking up in the morning and my 7-month-old son like crawling all over me and smiling at me, that for sure is like the best view in life.
Yeah. Give it a year.
Yeah. When he starts now he's kind of learned how to like whack me and wake me up. So the view has changed where it used to be like peaceful little smiles. Now it's like him like clobbering me in the face to wake me up. So I'm sure when he's like a year old, it'll start to get not so good. But for now, it's still pretty good.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful scene. All right, awesome. Now we know you. So
that actually did capture a lot of my personality, by the way, already. So good questions. Good questions right off the bat. I like it.
All right, so you're a Stanford grad. You're a 4-year student-athlete baseball player. You've received accolades for, exhibiting excellence, academic achievement.
Where do I pay you for this hype track? By the way? I'll hit you later on Venmo.
I'm going. I'm reading the list
right.
you gave me. No. You had, let's see, what were the other things? You were guided by Condoleezza Rice. You're a successful entrepreneur and investor. I take it you're not a very lazy guy. So where does your spark come from? If you can think back to when you realized that you wanted to succeed and you wanted to do well. I mean, I think about myself in junior high, and I was kind of a piece of shit. I was a little bit lazy. How far back do you remember being driven like that?
You know, I always remember being pretty driven and having like an internal wiring that pushed me forward. I've always thought a lot about the difference between motivation and discipline in life. And I think my parents and my grandfather and my dad really instilled that in me, of like this whole idea that you can't have to be motivated to do something every single day, because it's a dangerous way to live. If you have to be motivated, you're just going to go up and down and have these swings, because you're not always going to be motivated. You're going to wake up half the time and be like, shit, I don't want to do this thing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so this idea of developing like a cold, almost emotionless discipline in life and things that you're going to do has always been very central to how I approach things. And that's from, I don't know, I think back to it, I guess in the earliest days, probably in high school when I started to really approach baseball, just having that cold, emotionless discipline of like the alarm clock goes off, you wake up, you're going to do what you said you were going to do.
Yeah, there's no battle.
Yeah, there's no battle. And it actually is really liberating, because you don't have to have that battle in the morning of like, do I want to go do this thing? Do I want to, now, like, do I want to go get in this cold plunge? Do I want to go, get the workout in that I said I was going to do? There's not that battle. It doesn't exist when you remove motivation and needing to have that motivation. And I've always just sort of had that wiring. I saw it in my dad, and I think it's much easier to learn things when you just see them and observe them than it is when they're taught to you. Like anyone can tell you things. Your parents can, like, I used to have this idea that when my son was born, I would teach him all sorts of things. Right. I'd be like, hey, you have to be this way. You have to be this way. And I just realized, like, you can't do that. I didn't think about half the stuff my parents said to me. It's just in one ear, out the other as a kid. But when you see things in action, when you see your parents embodying things, those really stick with you. And so that, for me, I mean, from the early days of my life, I've always thought about discipline as being like a central tenet of how I operated.
How do you determine then what discipline is worth keeping in the mix?
It's a good question. For me, I think about a lot, like, what are the values? What are the kind of like central values that you're going to be focusing on? And like, how do you define success fundamentally? Like, what does winning look like to you in life? Because that's what's going to be the bounds on how you're going to operate and what you want to do. And at any point in your life, that definition changes. At some points, you're going to be really focused on money and trying to get off the ground in your career. Then at some point, you're going to be more focused on family and spending time with your family. But having those kind of non-negotiables around like what your values are, what are you really going to be focused on and trying to push towards, has always been really important to me. I think about, and I'm writing about this a lot right now in the context of the book that I'm working on. There's this scene. Have you seen the movie Apollo 13?
Yeah.
So in Apollo 13, there's that like famous climactic scene when they're coming into the re-entry into the atmosphere, and they realize that there's this really critical angle that they need to hit. If they're too shallow, they're going to skip off and shoot off into space. If they're too steep, they're going to just blow up on re-entry. And so they somehow need to like nail the angle of re-entry, but they don't have their computer on. The computer's been like blown up and they don't have enough power to turn it on. And so Tom Hanks comes in and is like, well, we can actually nail this angle by just focusing on getting the Earth in this window. And as long as we like run the burn, if we can keep the Earth in the window, we're going to optimize the angle of reentry and be okay. And I think about that so much as a metaphor for life, of like that window is sort of your values and the Earth is like your habits, the actions you're taking on a daily basis. And when you can achieve that alignment and just focus on that, you can accomplish so much going forward. And when you lose that alignment, that's when bad things happen.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. This is life. This is it.
Exactly.
Apollo 13 metaphor.
I love that movie too. It's so good.
Clearly. That's awesome. I love that because looking at the Earth through the window. I remember that scene vividly. I remember it well. All right, so let's talk about action, because I love how you say it as an emotionless discipline. And I love Jocko, discipline is freedom, that whole idea. And this comes from a personal place. That is a big struggle of mine. My emotions play a major factor into the thing. I mean, I can know everything, almost down to the parenting thing you said. We can talk and we can teach and we can tell and we can do all that stuff. But then it comes to action, comes to doing. How do you stay emotionless? How do you stay disciplined? How do you execute that?
You know Mark Manson. Do you know Mark Manson, the author of The Subtle Art of
He was
Not
on
Giving
our
a
show.
Fuck? Oh, that's awesome. So he's great. I've never met him. Love his writing and I thought that book was phenomenal. And it gets some people love it, some people hate it, which is kind of the point of the whole thing. Yeah. But in that book, he talks about this idea of values, and he talks about values that are good are evidence-based versus emotional. Mm-hmm. And that to me is just really important. It's like, what are going to be your evidence-based values that you're going to be pushing towards? And once you figure out what those are, they're evidence-based, you can slowly try to remove the emotion from how you're operating on a daily basis. You're never going to be perfect about it, right? Like, we are emotional creatures. That's actually a feature, not a bug. Being emotional is like a part of how we connect with people, how we develop relationships, how those relationships are strengthened over time. It generates a lot of dopamine for us over the course of our lives. It generates a lot of pain on the other side of it, which is fine, that kind of like give and take of life. But slowly moving yourself to be more methodical about how you operate towards the things that really matter to you, I just think is really important. I mean, like, it's been in all of these books that we constantly talk about. Like, James Clear always talked about having daily systems. I think those systems are just as important for operating in your relationships, operating with your family, how you think about being a father, a parent, a son, a brother, sister, whatever, as they are to your work. Like, everyone wants to apply them to work, and how you make progress against your professional goals, or how you make progress against your fitness goals. But you should think about those same things. Like, what are your systems for developing a really strong and healthy marriage? It's super important to feel like there are things that you're doing every single day that you said you were going to do them and you do them. One of those for me is like expressing appreciation for something tiny that the other person did. That's been one that in my mind, I'm like, I need to check the box on doing that. Not in a way where it's like fake, but in a way where I know that every single day I'm telling my wife one thing that I'm like, hey, you did this one thing, like an act of service, whatever it is. And I really appreciated that. It could be stupid, like a tiny thing. Oh, you got more pods for the dishwasher, whatever it was. Like, the little things that compounds over time, the same as any other investment you're going to make. And so I am a big believer of just having almost like a list of those daily systems that you just feel like you can check the box and create streaks around, because it really will change your life if you do that.
Okay. Do you keep all these areas separate then? So like, okay, I'm doing a good job in this marriage system at the moment, this financial system at the moment. Are they separate, or do they interplay for you? Like, being good in one kind of allows you to have more energy to be sort of focused on the other, or I don't know. How do you think about that?
Personally, I think that everything in your life is connected.
Yeah.
I have a really tough time keeping things separate. It's the reason why I'm such a prick about doing the things I say I'm going to do. Like, I talk about this constantly, that like, I'm going to really piss people off with the fact that I'm that way sometimes, because when I say I'm going to do something, I'm just going to do it. And it's not going to make sense. And sometimes it's going to mean that, like, if I said I'm going to do 30 minutes of cardio every day, we're going to get home from something at 10:30 at night. And I'm going to be like, shit, I didn't do it. I got to go do that thing. And it makes no sense. Like, there's no actual benefit. But my rationale is, if I don't do that one thing, it's going to make it easier for me to not do the one thing in whatever other area in my life.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's stupid, right? Like, it's not that 30 minutes of cardio is going to make a difference, or that getting into the cold plunge for the 5 minutes is going to make a difference. But to me, it's going to matter, because I'm going to know that I didn't do the thing that I said I was going to do. And it's going to slowly chip away at that identity that I've created as being someone that does the thing they say. So I think all of life is connected in that way. It's like really hard to separate it, at least for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little obsessive, right?
I mean, it's like a weird psycho. It's like, there's a borderline like psycho wiring to that type of thing. But I think it does, I think it's probably a common thread among people that, have achieved great things, is that they have this kind of like obsessive wiring around doing the thing they say they're going to do.
Absolutely. I mean, shoot. I mean, the obvious ones are the Kobes and the Jordans, and what's interesting is that, they didn't have many friends, because they did that. They were adamant.
Yeah. I mean, Jordan in what was that? In The Last Dance, Jordan talks about that, like his teammates. Like, you weren't going to like me.
Yeah.
We might not be friends, and that's okay. Like, to him, he was like, winning has a cost, right? Like, there is a price to winning. Yeah. And for him, that was just that obsessiveness. And he was going to hold you to the fire just as much as he would hold himself to the fire. And most guys couldn't handle that. You can't stand up. Like, you're going to run with Jordan. It's going to be really freaking hard. You're not going to like it. Tiger Woods was the same way.
Yeah.
And you see with all these guys, right, there were areas of their life that slipped because they were so obsessive over that one. What I'm trying to do is find balance across all of this, right? Like, I'm not an athlete on that level. I'm not going to be an entrepreneur on that level. I'm not like, if you're going to try to balance it, that generally means that you're going to be balanced across all of these areas. You're probably not going to achieve the 0.001% outcome in the one, which is what those guys were trying to do. And so, Steve Jobs is an example in the entrepreneurial world, sacrificed other areas of his life, right? Like as a family man, as a father, like other areas of his life that were really challenged as a result. I'm trying to find, and I think what I'm trying to help other people find through the things I'm putting out, the content I'm putting out, is a balance. Because for most people, that balance is the happy zone. Like that's where you can live a really amazing life, feel like you're contributing to society, feel like you're creating value for other people around you, but not lose sight of your family, your social life, the other things that make you so happy and create fulfillment in the long run. So that's really, like if I have a mission, that's really what it is.
Balance.
Yeah.
Balance. Let's talk about your book. I don't know how much you want to reveal as you're currently writing it, but I do know the premise is kind of and I'll let you say this better than me, but more of a different way of looking at wealth, a redefined, maybe newer perspective, different lens. Could you share on that? Because I know it relates to everything we're talking about.
Yeah. I had... It sort of relates to my general story and how I got to where I am, which is basically that I started my career working in finance. I was marching down like a very traditional path from a finance standpoint, making more and more money every single year, getting promoted, things were good. You're like thinking that you're following the trajectory towards being a successful person and like it feels good and people think you're doing well. And I had a realization right when COVID hit that I was basically chasing this thing. I was like climbing this one mountain and I was realizing that maybe it's actually the wrong mountain to climb. I started getting worried that I was going to get to the top of that mountain and look over and realize that it was the wrong mountain. Holy shit, I spent my whole life climbing this one mountain and it was the wrong one. Like this wasn't the mountain I was supposed to climb. And I had what I would characterize as like a panic attack or nervous breakdown around all of this. And it coincided with things happening from a family perspective that led to, a lot of thought just comprehensively about life. And what I realized was in this moment, financial wealth, which we've always hyped as what wealth is. You see someone that has a lot of money and you think like, wow, that person's so wealthy, amazing, so cool, is only one type of wealth that exists. And so the whole thesis that I'm going to be presenting in the book is that there are really 5 types of wealth. And I'm going to present both the argument for that and the rationale around it, as well as build out a tactical guide for building these different types of wealth into your life, for building that balance that I talked about. I'm super, super excited about the project. I think it's going to be transformative, frankly, like for myself in the writing process and for a lot of people who read it. I think it comes like both as something that will help people to build that balanced wealth in their life, and then also something hopeful for people who have traditionally not felt wealthy. They look at their lives and they say like, oh my God, I wish I had more money because look, all these wealthy people out there, to realize they actually have quite a lot. Because they're living and they're super close with their family and they live close, or they're physically well and healthy, or they feel fulfilled mentally, are very mindful, they have kind of presence, etc. So I'm super, super excited about it. It'll probably come out mid 2024 if I had to guess, publishing timelines being what they are. And frankly, the writing process is going to take a while. But I think it's going to be great.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I'll come back on once it comes out and we can talk about it more.
Yeah, love to. Love to.
Well, we might have a lot to talk about by then because we're sort of reimagining. You're talking about balance and redefining, right, wealth and success. And we're kind of doing a similar thing with wellness and looking at, these daily habits you engage in, and then how is the consumption of alcohol, your relationship with alcohol impacting all of those. So right now you take an assessment, you look at your, you maybe go to a therapist or a doctor, you ask some questions, and really they're just trying to figure out like what level of risky drinking are you engaging in. And so we're kind of reframing that to more just like, how does it really fit with your wellness goals at large? So I think what you're saying and what we're talking about, actually a lot of balance, a lot of redefining, and really coming back to like, what does that mean to you to feel good, to feel happy, to feel fulfilled?
Yeah. And alcohol played a pretty key role in this whole journey for me personally. Like I was drinking way too much in my prior life. I mean, we were having like five dinners a night out, for work stuff. And I was drinking a few drinks at every single one of those. And then I was going out with friends or trying to on the weekend, or drinking just by myself at home because it was like a good way to feel good and go to sleep. And what I realized, this is probably up until like May of 2021, right? Like I realized, oh my God, I'm drinking way too much, like a few drinks a night. It's just, and it's not in line with all the other things I talk about and do in my life. I was working out 6-7 days a week. Like I really cared about my physical health and my fitness and all these other areas of life. And then suddenly I'm doing this thing that's like really not in line with my core values, and I'm making bad decisions around it. And that led to me making a big change around it, to where I was like, okay, I think I can find a place of balance where alcohol for me is more just like a social bonding thing. And that might mean having one drink a week when I'm having a special dinner with a special friend, and I'm having like, a nice glass of wine with a friend, and we're connecting over this nice drink, versus like drinking by myself, 2 drinks on a Monday night while I'm writing really serves no purpose. I'm not connecting with anyone in that way. And so it really shifted for me around that to just align with the broader values that I had in life.
So I'm just thinking, for listeners at home, that's a big question they could ask themselves, sort of like, every time I'm doing this, what am I gaining out of it? How does it relate back to my core values, right? Which is that window. And then if it doesn't, what's the point?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I convinced myself, one of the reasons I was drinking was I convinced myself that drinking made me a better writer.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'd have 2 whiskeys, and I even like wrote, I'd say like, I'm 2 whiskeys deep. Like I had this writing thing where I was doing, and I would have a couple drinks and I would write, and I thought it like loosened me up, and I started creating this like romanticized vision of like Hemingway, these writers who like wrote while they were drunk. And a lot of those guys died when they were like 40, by the way, which we don't have to talk about. They lived a good life, which I don't want to do. I have a kid now. I'm like, man. And so when I found out my wife was pregnant, and I found out, we were going to have a son, I was like, I got to make sure that I'm doing things for the right reason. Like I want to be around for his whole life, right? Like I want to be around and be a big part of it. And I don't want to be in a bad spot, or put my wife in a tough spot. And so, and she doesn't drink really at all or much. And so that really shifted my whole perspective on it, of just like thinking like, what is the real reason that I'm doing this? How should I be thinking about drinking, if at all? And where does it fit into my life? Like where does it mean something?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like Charlotte alluded to, that's exactly what we're trying to get, the masses to do these days, because there's more and more science, there's more conversation. We all know of the sober curious, the alcohol-free trend going on. There are alcohol-free bars popping up everywhere. I mean, this is not new. It's happening right now, and it's pretty exciting for us. But the ideas behind everything you're saying, people are just looking deeper. It's like, why am I doing this? Like, am I doing this because everybody else does, and because we've traditionally done this forever? Well, that doesn't make it okay. It doesn't make it good or productive. And, like you said, it's for me, it was always kind of a crutch and something that just made me feel good in the moment. And then, of course, after time, if you don't look at it, it escalates and escalates. And then all of a sudden you've got all these consequences, and it's like, what the heck? And then it's potentially too late. And then you're dealing with addiction. And so anyway, I'm just
I mean, for a lot of people too, alcohol it becomes a big part of their environment, right? It's like the things they're doing, it's the people they're around, it's everything. And people fail to realize, or fail to really internalize the fact that your environment creates your whole reality with all this stuff. And so when drinking is a huge part of your environment, that means you're going out, that means you're putting yourself into, risky situations a lot of the time, at least for me. Like, I think about in college, like my mom always used to tell me that, like, nothing good happens after midnight or whatever the fact is. And it's just true. Like in my own experience, and I feel like probably in a lot of people's experiences, good decisions generally don't get made after midnight, especially not when you've drank. No. But it creates your whole environment. And if your environment creates your reality, that's the people you're around. And this might mean, by the way, like when you're shedding alcohol from your life or reducing the amount, that might mean that there are people in your life that you need to shed on the way. I mean, I think so much about the analogy of like hermit crabs, and the fact that they have a shell and they enjoy that shell and it protects them and is a part of their environment. And then they leave it and they go find a new shell. And we have this stigma in society with humans that that's not okay. Like you're supposed to just have your friends, and those are your friends for life, and you're supposed to keep them with you, and it's loyalty, and you don't quit on people, and your family, and those people are just, they're there. And the reality is that might not be the case for your life. You might need to leave your shell and find a better one for that next phase of your life, whatever it is. Maybe you're leveling up in some way and you're going into a place that prior shell just isn't going to be the right fit for you. Maybe it was when you were in college and you were having fun and doing things, but now you're getting serious. You're having kids. You're trying to progress professionally, and that's okay. And I think we need to reduce the stigma associated with that. Like I talk a lot about this idea of boat anchors. Like there are people in your life who are holding back your progress. They're drags. It's like you have an anchor out off the side of your boat and you're trying to go full speed and you can't because the freaking anchor is hanging in the ground on the seafloor. And you need to figure out who those people are and cut the line on it.
Yeah.
And it's really challenging because sometimes it's like a close friend or someone that you've been around for a long time. Sometimes it's family, which is really, really tough.
Yeah.
But when you do that, when you cut the lines from those people, all of a sudden you're unlocked. It's like this weight off your shoulders that you can just move forward in life and progress on the things that you want to progress on. And so I just, in general, think we need to start slowly removing the stigma associated with that.
Yeah.
Moving on
Cutting
to the next
ties.
thing, cutting ties.
Well, and there's a way to do it, right? I mean, when we think about that, we think about like, people who just like step over people and I got to get my way and get to where I'm trying to get. Well, that's not what you're saying. It's more of like an emotional tie. And, you can still have acquaintances and people that you've known your whole life as long as you're just not emotionally invested and tied into that relationship, which then would weigh you down. Otherwise,
Absolutely.
It's just someone you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, we're talking about mostly external, right? Like people and habits and environments. But what about internal? I mean, you mentioned that your belief was that you were a better writer when you drank, right? So how do you shed those sort of misconceptions that you've developed about yourself and your identity? Like, what was that process? What are the tools to do that?
Because there's truth to it.
Right.
Sometimes it does make you write better in the moment. Now, of course, you can look at the grand umbrella and that it creates other, issues and consequences. But shit, some of the greatest songs, some of the greatest books. I mean, there's things that creativity sometimes is pushed by these substances.
Actions create identity. Big believer in that. Movement, actions, experiences are what create identity. And I mean, there's this whole concept in of neuroplasticity, which is basically this whole idea that like experiences can actually change the structure of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I think about changing your identity, I think about changing your brain and how you think about these things, it has to come from movement. It has to come from actually taking actions to be that type of person that you want to be. And that's challenging at first. Like the first action is the most challenging thing. I mean, when you're going to quit something, when you're going to try to do something new, it's like the whole metaphor of jumping into a freezing lake or like getting into a cold plunge, whatever you're going to do. The hardest thing actually isn't once you're in. The hardest thing is actually getting in. Like I do a cold plunge every single morning and it's on my deck. It's like 30 degrees out this morning, right? Like 25 degrees out when I'm going and getting into it at 5:30 in the morning. It's dark out. The hardest thing isn't getting into it. It's opening the door to go out onto the deck because I know that once I open the door, then I'm going to have to get in. And so it's all like pain in my mind. And once I'm out the door, I'm in it and it's fine. And you kind of get through it and you like breathe, whatever. But the opening of the door is the hard part. And so it's just taking that first action, like just starting to create the movement, create the experiences that start to actually shift your brain, shift your identity. I mean, it's like actually scientifically proven that has a structural effect on the way your brain works. So that's what it takes. It's like the bias for action, and an action movement cures everything.
I love the cold plunge, by the way.
Oh, it's the best.
It is truly it is.
Talk about things that bleed over into other areas of your life.
No
man. I mean,
question.
it's amazing.
I was getting ready to, the next words out of my mouth were, it has changed my life.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not doing it every morning like you, but I plan to, and I do a lot of like, breaking of the ice and getting in like cold ponds and lakes.
Yeah, I need to start doing
and
that now that it's cold.
It's so fun. Oh my God. But the lead up and the anticipation is, I mean, that's the challenge. It's not the pain and the water. I mean, yeah, that's hard too, but it's all mental.
Yeah.
Like that whole thing is mental. And I look, Laird Hamilton talks about it. He's who kind of introduced me to it back in the day.
Big wave surfer?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. His wife was on our show.
Cool.
And so they have this workout program called XPT, and they do a lot of ice baths. And he talks about it. There's two kind of pieces. There's the biological piece, the hormonal pushes and the dopamine and the serotonin and all the things, the chemical stuff that it can create. But then there's the doing something that you don't fucking want to do. And that, for me, is the biggest reward. Because I have the self-discipline stuff and the stuff, that's the stuff I grapple with most. But to go get in a freezing cold pool or pond or bath, I do not want to do it. And when I do it, I feel like
a beast.
A beast.
Yeah, it's a beast, dude.
Absolute
It
beast.
is. It is. I mean, someone was asking me this the other day, like, dude, it's so it's so stupid that you do that. The science is kind of like not all there yet, and some people say it works, some people say it doesn't. And my whole thing is like, I don't care. Like the science is actually just the upside for me. Like that's
Right.
the great. That's
a
the like cherry on top. If there's like some benefit for my brown fat or my like longevity or whatever, like great, fine. Like that's awesome. I'm doing it for the reason you just said, that it changes the type of person I am. And again, it's a thing that I'm doing that like is implanting in me this identity of who I am as an individual. And the other reason that no one really talks about is for me, it's like a moment of gratitude every single morning for all the things I've been given and the things I'm lucky to have. And when I say that, what I mean is like, I feel unbelievably lucky for so many things in life. And when I go and get into that every morning, it's like inflicting on myself this little bit of like pain that I feel like I need in my life because of all the lucky things that have happened to me for no, like absolutely no reason. I didn't deserve half, like 99% of where you end up is just like where you're born,
right.
Who you're born to, the circumstances around your life. And then you control that last 1%, like the decisions you make, the things you do, are incredibly impactful, but so much has been given to me. And I just feel like every morning when I go and do that, I'm able to like give thanks a little bit and like pay my little like rent of like the fact that I'm going into this incredible life with all of these amazing gifts.
Oh man, that was killer, Sahil. I love the way you said that. Couldn't be more true for a lot of us. So let's dig into pain.
All right.
Because pain, holy cow. We've done whole episodes on pain. But just as it leads to growth, David Goggins, these guys that do similar to what you're saying, probably on a little bit different scale, where it's intentional suffering, intentional pain with the idea of creating growth. Now, obviously there's physical and then there's emotional and different variations of that. How do you inflict pain other than like a cold plunge in the morning? Like, what do you see the value of suffering?
So I've written about this in the past that we have, over the course of the last, I don't know, call it 100 years, probably more than that realistically, the trend societally has been to reduce friction. Like take friction from where it was in normal society and just slowly chip away at it until we live in this like frictionless, perfect, blurry existence of like, you never have to talk to anyone because you can just order your groceries at home. You never have to talk to the checkout clerk because you can just pay with your phone. You get everything delivered to your house within a day. You don't have to lift anything because they bring it in. Like there's just no friction. And that is the trend of technology, is to just remove friction from everything, and it makes the consumer experience better because humans like no friction. We're super happy to not have to do anything. This is great. It's like, oh, awesome. I don't have to talk to this person. I don't have to, take out my wallet to pay. I don't like all these little things. And then what you realize is we remove all friction from life, and suddenly you're like, oh, actually that was what added the texture and the meaning and the purpose to our existence. And so you have this obsessive desire and quest to remove friction, and then you're like, holy shit, why are we even here if you have none of it? And so I wrote about this recently, this whole idea that we need to find ways to strategically reinsert friction to our lives. I'm a big believer that like if you can reduce stress and friction in certain ways, that's great. Like if it makes your life a little bit easier to, have help around the house or to get the groceries delivered to you so that you can spend more time with your kids, I think that's awesome. But you need to find a few ways where you're going to incur intentional friction in your life in order to make sure that you feel like you have to feel it. That's what adds the texture to life. That's what slows things down so that you don't just wake up and realize that you're 80 and you just like, holy shit, what happened? My whole life just went by.
Yeah.
Nothing. I didn't feel any texture. There was no, like, those moments of pain are what you remember.
Yeah.
When you think back on your life, it's not like the pure, peaceful nothingness of like a day when you didn't do anything. It's the moments where you like did something that you really didn't want to do and you experienced pain and there was real friction in your life. So I'm a big believer that you have to just find ways to reinsert that friction in your life. The cold plunge is one of those ways that I do it. I also just once a week do some sort of stupid physical challenge with a friend.
Yeah.
And this one friend, Chad Rogers, who he's a professional baseball player. We trained together back in the day when we were training for baseball. In our last year of training for baseball, we were both pretty injured. And we basically just decided that the only way we were going to be able to perform at a high level that year was by being mentally bulletproof. And so we started doing just like, rather than just doing the training for baseball and the like physical stuff, we started doing like stupid mental challenges. Like we went out, it was like 0 degrees that year in Boston. It was like this crazy cold spell. And we went out and we crawled up a mountain. There was this like mountain near my house called Cat Rock. It was like pretty steep. It was like the big sledding mountain in town. And we crawled up it like from the base.
Like crab walk?
Yeah, no, like army crawled up this freaking mountain in the snow. And then we went back down it and got into this frozen river and went like a half a mile in this frozen river.
Oh my God.
And we were just doing dumb stuff. And this is like back in 2013 or something like that. And now, you know, he's one of my best friends in the world. And we now every single Sunday will do some sort of stupid challenge. So like today after this, it kind of alternates who gets to choose the challenge, and the other person just has to do it. Like there's no, you're not allowed to be like, I don't want to do that, whatever. Yeah. So like, you know, a few weeks ago it was the New York Marathon, and I texted him and I was like, neither one of us runs. Like I've never run over 3 miles in my life. Had just never done it. And I texted him and I was like, you got to go to a track and run 10 miles tomorrow. God. And you just have to get it done. I've never done that in my life. No idea how long it was going to take. So we went out and did it. And like, I didn't walk for 3 days. Like I was in bad shape. And so today, like after this, he texted me last night. He's like, you have to do 30 minutes of 50-pound weight vest step ups, just like in a row, just like 30 minutes straight, just like monotonous, terrible, boring over and over. So I have to go do that after when we get out of here.
Do you do it with him or?
No, he lives in Florida, man. He lives in Florida. And so I'm like, it's a little easier for you when you got to do these things. It's like nice and sunny and warm out. I got to do it in the freezing cold. But no, I mean, like just having relationships, people, things like that in your life where you're kind of accountable to doing things that are hard on a daily basis, I just think is so important. It adds that friction back. It creates that texture in your life. And it does force you to grow in some way. I mean, all of it comes down to, Goggins talks about this. Mm-hmm. It all comes down to controlling your mind.
Yeah.
And when you go do the thing that you don't want to do, you're putting one in the win column for having control over your mind. And if you don't control your mind and you let it control you, you're going to be in for a really tough time in life.
Well, then it relates back to all the emotions, because then you're following feelings and then you're kind of out of control.
Yeah. And the other thing is like, life is really hard. There are going to be really challenging things that happen. And so if you cannot train your stress response, if you can't train your pain tolerance, then when those things happen that are really painful and stressful, how are you going to deal with them? Like it's like any other muscle. Like you need to be prepared to deal with those things. So I think about this constantly of like, I feel since I've done about 100 straight days now of the cold plunge every single morning, and I feel like nothing really stresses me out anymore. Mm-hmm. I just don't like, I don't really feel like there's random stuff that happens, you know, and granted, like, I'm waiting for the like really stressful thing to, you know, like your kid gets sick or something happens in your family. And then how do you really handle it? I haven't, knock on wood, had something like that yet. I will. And those things happen in life. And it's like, how are you going to respond to that? Well, you're training yourself every single day for responding to those things. You're embracing the little points of pain. You're embracing the fact that you need to slow down your breathing and just like be present in a moment. And it's just a big thing for everybody. It's like, find the way to train that.
How do you stay then in that space and out of, I don't know, like fear-based or like, you know, living in a space where you're constantly thinking about like, I've got to prepare for this horrible negative thing or this potential for this. I mean, how do you stay then, how do you create that balance to stay out of too much negativity?
I actually don't think about the negative events. I think about the fact that I'm going to be prepared if they do inevitably happen. Like I'm not sitting around thinking about like, oh, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. I got to be ready for it. Like that's kind of like doomsday prepping, which I've never been big into. Like, you know, I don't have like a go bag or anything in my house to like get the hell out of Dodge if I need. Maybe I should. I don't know. Maybe I should like doomsday prep a little more, seeing where the world is today. But no, I think it's just like you're doing something every day where you know when the inevitable happens, something happens in your life, your family, etc., that you're going to be able to handle it and that you're built for that. And it's the same thing with training. I mean, like you lift every single day and you go and, you know, train to try to be strong. People are like, why are you doing, you know, like I have a coach that writes my programs because I can't write my own programs because I'm going to only write things that I want to do and that I like. And the whole point is that I'm doing things that I don't like. Like yesterday I had to do like front rack reverse lunges. And you're like, why are you possibly doing that? Like I'm not training for something. I'm not playing baseball anymore. Like there's no reason for me to be on a single leg, like Bulgarian split squat. I'm just like, this is miserable. It sucks. But you're training to like, I'm like, protect my family, man. Right. This is real life. This isn't like some joke to me anymore. Like baseball was a joke. That was a game. That was a kid's game that I got to play at a high level for a while, like way longer than I should have, frankly. This is life. Like, you're training for like a much more important and serious thing now.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I love that. That's I mean, that's the stuff of leaders, right? I mean, there's a lot of people in this world that are not, and it's not preparing for war or anything like that, although you could be. I mean, but like you said, by the way the world's going, I often look around and I look at people and I'm like, all right, if somebody was chasing you with a knife, like you're gonna get stabbed. Like I'm gonna get away. I'm gone, and my legs work, and I'm pretty damn strong. So, that's how I think about some of the preparation and the training and even the mental stuff. It's like, man, and it's not about. I don't know, but we've had some losses in our family recently, and you can see some people who just completely break, all the way down, and that's not bad. That's okay. Sometimes we need to have that release and just get broken down to our core. I don't know, but there also needs to be someone there to comfort that person and kind of be a little more solid, secure, prepared.
Yeah, and there's something powerful about embracing that duty in life.
That's right.
And being ready to be there
That's
for
right.
those people and being that rock. And people like to make it as like a gender thing, but I don't think it is. Like you can be that rock, whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, like whatever. It's a mentality of like, you're going to be there and you're going to be there in the darkest hour.
Yeah.
Most of your friends, I've written about this, I've talked about this, and I believe it so strongly. Most of your friends are not really your friends. They're just along for the ride when it's fun, when it's convenient, when you're winning, when it's valuable to be there, and they're gone when it's none of those things.
Yeah.
And the real people in your life are the people who are there when it's none of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you have nothing to offer them in return, and they're still there showing up right next to you. And those are your darkest hour friends. And those maybe going to be 5 of those people in your life, maybe 10 if you're really, really lucky. And your entire goal in life should be to cherish those people and make sure that you are that person to someone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
I saw your post on that, and I made a comment, and I said, and of course I always relay it back to drinking. I was like, you want to really test your friends? Stop drinking. See how many of them stick around.
Yeah. I think it was Chris Williamson. Have you seen Chris Williamson? He's a podcaster too.
I know the name.
I think that's his name, Chris Williamson.
It's like Chris X.
Yeah. He went on... I think he either had Huberman on his podcast or he went on Huberman's podcast, and he said something to the effect of alcohol is the only drug where if you're not doing it, people view you like you have a problem.
Right.
And I thought that was so powerful and so well said because it's very true. Not doing the drug makes people think you have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how weird is that?
So weird.
It's a bizarre thing, structurally, societally. And it is changing. You said this earlier.
Yeah.
Like very quickly, actually. I think I've seen people tweet this and it's become sort of a meme of like in 20, 30 years, we're going to view alcohol the way we view cigarettes today. And I don't know. I think there's probably a middle ground. I think that's probably like a little further than I would say it's going to go. And personally, I have found a happy medium of alcohol being a thing that I use for kind of like real intimate one-on-one bonding that I actually feel like it helps and actually like helps create connection. It's sort of in the way that I think our ancestors might have used it and societally and with creating connection.
Ritually.
Yeah, ritually. But there's something there. It is changing, and it's changing in real time. It's changing fast.
It is. It is. The different, people often make that analogy to cigarettes, and the difference is the actual effect alcohol has compared to the actual effect cigarettes have. I mean, one cigarette never made me feel like a glass of bourbon did. Cigarettes made me feel like shit. Bourbon made me feel like God.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the other difference is like no one's, running off the road killing someone after 2 cigarettes.
That's right.
That's right. And that happens. Like I've had people I know killed in a drunk driving accident. It's like it's an awful, awful thing.
Yeah. Yep. There's a list of consequences for sure. Let's do one little dive into the topic of honesty. We talk about honesty a lot on our show. Alcohol has the ability to create a kind of a alternate reality sometimes, and you can sometimes equate that to dishonesty without dishonesty meaning lying. That's not what I mean. I mean an alternate reality, like a lack of truth, and often that runs deep internally. We discuss honesty from an internal space often, as opposed to, oh, I'm just spouting off lies. It's more, are you in tune with the truth and in tune with who you are? And sometimes this gets into a spiritual space. Do you practice spirituality and some of that inner honesty?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love to hear a little bit about that.
I mean, I've grown up in like a very, I don't know, multicultural, multiracial, multi-religious household. Like my mom's from India, grew up Hindu, came over to the U.S. for college at 18 by herself, met my dad, who is a Jewish white guy from the Bronx. Neither family really wanted to accept that they were together. My dad's family ultimately disowned him. I've never met anyone on my dad's side of the family. My mom's family ended up embracing it and embracing him, just given he had kind of like given up his family to be with her. But I grew up in this like weird collision of worlds, right? Like I had the Hindu mother, Jewish father. My mom is kind of like somewhat Buddhist in some of the things she believes, and I never really felt like I like fit into one bucket or into one world, and so it developed in me this like very interesting amalgamation of sort of beliefs, cultures, faiths, etc., that I think still runs true for me today. Like I don't feel particularly affiliated with one religion or one kind of sect or one belief system, but I'm a big believer in just kind of like focusing within, and I think you find that in a lot of, as a common thread within a lot of religions.
Yeah.
That the like, that central line of like being true to yourself, the inner honesty, is really, really important. I think constantly about the fact that we lie to ourselves, and it's the worst lie you can tell is a lie to yourself. And there's so many common lies. Like we tell ourselves we're going to do things. We're going to do it later. Hey, I'm going to do this later. Like, oh no, I don't want to do this now. I'm going to do this later. And it's like, it's a lie.
No, you're not.
You're not going to do it. You're just not going to do it. And there's so many, I need to write more about this. Like, what are the most common lies that we tell ourselves? Because it's also the worst lie you can tell is the lie to yourself. Because the second you start lying to yourself, it's like, if you can lie to yourself, you're the most important person in your world. If you can lie to yourself, who the hell else are you going to? You lie to anyone. You lie to everyone about everything in the world if you're willing to lie to yourself. And I think a lot of it comes from fear. A lot of it comes from insecurity. I mean, I think back on my past, like I was super insecure for most of my life. Like high school, and all of my bad decisions come from points of insecurity. Like I think about when I was a kid, like in high school, dumb shit I did. It was always because I was insecure about who I was. It was like, I didn't think I was as good as other people, were saying I was. And so I started lying and like saying that I was better than I was, making shit up. I like needed to feel good about who I was as a person. And so I'd like, talk to girls or whatever, try to act all cool and like, hype myself up in a way that was like, it was stupid. It was just because I was insecure. I was like chubby, high school or whatever. I was just an insecure person. And so until you find that like security and comfort with who you really are, it's very, very difficult to be honest with the world around you and to be honest with yourself. Like when you're insecure like that and you're lying to others, you're lying to yourself that whole time. You're not willing to look yourself in the mirror and say like, I'm not shit, and just be honest and like literally look at yourself and just be like, oh, you're actually not doing the things you say you're going to do. You're not the person that you want to be, and just be honest and have that conversation to where then you can make a change.
Yeah.
But most people, you're not willing to do that. It's like very, very uncomfortable to be able to look in the mirror and say that.
That's right. And I've got a 12-year-old now, and this is a child that's entering adolescence, and I mean, in the thick of what you're talking about. Not in high school yet, but going through those phases of trying to figure out who they are. And I think the insecurities and the even lying to yourself is all very normal and natural for growth early on in life. I mean, how many young people know who they are, when they're 12? They're not looking in the mirror like, I'm going to, we're all trying things out and going down different paths, trying to figure things out, trying out being different people too. I think that's a fascinating part of our lives. Some people kind of continue to do that throughout their entire lives, and some of them kind of figure it out a little bit earlier on.
Yeah, and we all, I mean, it's a never-ending game.
Sure.
You're always insecure about something. You're never like, some people say like, oh yeah, I'm not at all. But everyone has their thing that they're insecure about, whatever it is. Like, you know, you said you still get nervous public speaking.
Yeah.
Like, it's fun. You're hosting a podcast.
Oh, I know.
And you say you're nervous public speaking. Like, that's very funny from the outside thinking, you know, outside looking in. Like, that's a very funny thing to even think about. But we all have those things. And generally, I've tried to be more introspective about it now when, like, I'll say something that's like, you know, I'll like say something to someone. And in my own head, I'm like, that's not really true. Mm-hmm. The thing I just said, like the way I'm feeling about this thing or whatever, like I'm just hiding from something because I'm insecure about it. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, I'm not secure about how this podcast is going. And so I'm going to tell people it's going great. And like, I'm so happy with how it's going because I'm just covering up the fact that I'm insecure about it. And so I want to like put on this face that everything's great to the outside world. And it's bullshit. And like when you're able to just think in the moment when you can recognize it, that's the most powerful thing. Because then you say it and you're like, okay, that wasn't true. I just lied about that. What is the thing? What is my issue that's leading to me wanting to tell that lie or wanting to make up this thing? And when you can start having that awareness, that's when you can start changing the dialogue and you can start actually making improvement on it. When you're not aware of it, you're just going through life. Like that was how I was in high school, man. That's how I was for most of my college years, frankly, of like, I didn't have really that sense of self. I hadn't figured out who I was, to your point about your kid. And was I like an athlete or was I a nerd or was I, you know, like a jock? Was I smart? Was I not? Like, was I like brown or was I white? Like, I didn't know who I was really. Mm-hmm. And that makes it so hard to be honest with yourself about things.
Yeah, no question.
What's that? So you're talking about in real time, which I love, but I was thinking about this too. I think based on where you are in life and what you're doing at the moment, day to day, that you're exposed to a lot of evidence-based theories or not yet evidence-based theories, right? And you're constantly, it sounds like, thinking like, how do I integrate this? Is this going to be worth making a part of my routine? It's also leading me back to just like, do you have a process? I don't know if it's meditation or if you sit down and you write things out. Like, how do you sit down and check in with yourself? Like, this is going well. Mm-hmm. This is not really going well, but it kind of looks good. Like, what's that process for you?
So I do like 5 minutes of journaling every day before going to bed. I would say there are like 3 things I do. My self check-in regimen, if you will. 5 minutes before bed every single night. I basically just like free form, right? Yeah, I'll just like brain dump of random shit that's making me anxious and how I'm feeling about random stuff, what I need to be thinking about more, what was on my mind, what wasn't on my mind that should have been on my mind during that day. It really helps me just like get things down on paper and it helps me sleep, frankly. Yeah. Otherwise, I'll get into bed and my mind's racing on 100 different things. So that's 1. 2, at the end of every month, I do a little like monthly review. And in that, it's basically to make sure that my course is directed in the right direction. There's this like whole idea of like your direction is much more important than your speed. I'd much rather be going slowly in the right direction than really fast in the wrong direction. I talked about it earlier, like climbing a mountain. I don't want to get to the top of this freaking mountain and realize it was the wrong mountain and that I didn't climb the right mountain. Yeah. And so I'm very deliberate on a monthly basis about looking at what is my direction. Like, are my daily systems actually aligned with my goals? Am I moving and marching towards the things that I was trying to accomplish on a more medium and long term? And what course corrections do I need to make in real time on a monthly basis in order to do that? And then the last one is at the end of the year. And at the end of the year, I do a kind of personal annual review. And I basically am trying to boil down to like, what did I learn this year? Like, how am I a different human being than what I was a year ago today? Because I'm a huge believer that who you are today is basically a direct result of the choices you made a year ago. And that means that who I am a year from now is basically a direct result of the choices I make today. And when you realize that, you really act differently on a daily basis. When you realize that where you are a year from now is a direct result of the things that I'm going to choose to do today and how I'm going to approach the day. And that is a hugely empowering idea. It's also a scary one for a lot of people. But we all have the same amount of time. Like, I don't have 30 hours in a day and you have 24. We all have 24 hours in a day. Some people just use theirs better than others. Yeah. Some people are investing their time versus spending their time. When you're spending your time, you're doing stupid shit. You're scrolling on social media, you're gossiping, you're complaining about stuff, you're, chit-chatting. Like, you're just doing dumb things. And then when you're investing your time, you're really creating that future version of yourself. You're doing things that are making that future version better off. And that's things that compound. That's like investing in yourself. That's like reading. That's having productive conversations with people where you're learning things. That's writing. It's, working on those big projects that are really important. It's It's working on yourself physically, working on yourself mentally. Those are all investments in that 1 year from now self.
Yeah.
Scrolling on social media never made anyone better off.
No.
It just made you wish you were somewhere else. Like
That's
social
right.
media is designed to make you wish that you were somewhere else right now. You open it up and you're like, oh man, this person's on some crazy vacation. This person's more jacked than me. This girl's better looking than me. Like, it's only designed to make you feel bad about what you're not. And so what good is that in your life, scrolling around looking at that? It's only going to make you feel bad. No one really looks on social media. It's like, wow, I feel really empowered. I spent an hour on Instagram today. I feel so empowered. I feel strong. I feel better off. Like, what a great way that I just used that hour.
Yeah.
Every now and then you find people that are really positive, and that's great. You should follow those people. Like, what you're consuming, the things you're consuming on a daily basis, create who you are. And so make sure that you're really curating and being very smart about like cutting people of what you're consuming on a daily basis as well.
So similar to what you were just saying about the decisions today being a year from now, right? Like who you're curating that, what is coming into your periphery every day. So unfollowing a few people today and, intentionally picking someone up who's saying something that pushes you out of your comfort zone. I mean, hopefully 6 weeks from now, your feed is consistently putting something valuable in if you're going to look at it.
Coming on our show.
Yeah.
It's going to be huge value later.
Yeah. And the algorithms of these platforms are constantly trying to throw shit at you.
Yeah.
Oh.
Because they actually don't want you to leave the platform to go do productive things. Like TikTok is not designed to make you like see something and be like, oh shit, I'm going to go work out and like do this thing because that's going to make me better a year from now.
No.
It's designed to make you be like, oh, and just keep scrolling for an entire day. They want you to just stay on there because that's their ad business. Like, it's great. It makes money for them. And so you have to really fight the algorithm. You have to like fight back against technology. It's like Terminator shit. Like, it's coming for you. And you got to fight back against it if you want to like reclaim your life and your sanity around these things. Yeah. And curating who you're consuming from is the right approach. You have to like constantly purge what your intakes are.
Well, and this all goes back to what we started off talking about. It's and kind of one of our last topics we wanted to bring up was just the world of temptation. And the temptation is comfort and pleasure. And simplicity and all the things that create pain and more stress and less preparation. It's a bizarre world we live in. We had Dr. Anna Lemke on our show.
Oh, yeah, Dopamine Nation.
Yeah, Dopamine. She's fascinating. I got to...
Man, you guys got some killer guests. This is awesome.
Yeah, we have.
Feeling some imposter syndrome here.
No, you're in good company. And she talks a lot about pleasure and pain and kind of the homeostasis that the brain will create after too much pleasure. And you'll just have this like big push of, and obviously it's more like depression and mental health symptoms, as a result of just creating too much comfort and fluff and non-friction.
There's this idea that I recently came across, the surfer mentality. Have you heard of it?
I'm not sure. Probably. Okay.
So the surfer mentality is this idea that a surfer is kind of wading in the waves, gets up on a wave, and is so happy, like riding this wave at the peak of this wave, even though they know that the wave is eventually going to crash down on top of their head. They can experience this incredible joy and appreciation for being on the peak of this wave and riding this wave, knowing that it's going to crash down, bundle them, toss them around a bunch, because they know that there's another wave coming. And that there is always going to be another wave coming. And it's an amazing metaphor for life and an appreciation and creating happiness in your life, that like these waves come and go and you're going to ride one. You have to know that it's not going to last forever. It's going to end and it's going to crash down on your head and be really painful. But there's always another wave coming. And when you can appreciate that, it creates this amazing and really beautiful cycle for how you live life, that like you're never going to be too up or too down around life. You're able to appreciate the highs, knowing that they're going to come to an end. And when you get crushed and you're getting rolled around in the waves, you're also able to just see that there's a light after that and that there's another wave coming for you to ride. Yeah. I think it's like a beautiful, beautiful way of thinking about these things.
I love that.
Just got to get up and breathe.
Yeah.
As long as you can get up and breathe.
Right.
That helps.
One factor.
Yeah.
I mean, that even, we both have our background in therapy, but, there's this whole idea that emotions are like waves. They come and they go. You can choose which ones to ride. But I also like that. Like,
I love that. I actually haven't heard that recently, but it's a great one.
It's great. And it fits with what you're saying too, which is if you're going to ride this wave, enjoy it. But also, be a little intentional about which wave. Like, this is a shitty wave coming. There's a better one somewhere behind it.
It's a great point.
So
That's a great new layer to the surfer mentality, actually, that you just added, which is like, you don't have to ride every wave. Warren Buffett has this amazing phrase of like, life doesn't reward you for the number of swings you take. Like, wait for the juicy pitch that you're going to get. And it's like baseball analogy, so it's near and dear to my heart. But it's very true.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to swing at everything that comes your way. You should wait for the juiciest pitch. And when it comes, swing hard as fuck.
Yeah.
Right.
Commit.
Swing hard as all hell and mash the hell out of that ball. And that, like, I think it's a beautiful way to think about life in general. Have you read, speaking of surfing stuff, it's an amazing book that I recently reread, Barbarian Days, A Surfing Life?
I have not read it, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
So actually, don't read it. I read it once and then I listened to it on audiobook. The audiobook is incredible. Incredible. Like, on your next long car ride, it's like it's such a random book for me to like because I'm not a surfer. I don't know anything about surfing. And I, for some reason, picked it up. And it's like meditative, the book. It's just like a storytelling, incredible. And it makes you kind of want to surf. I'm terrified of sharks. And so I like refuse to surf inexplicably.
that makes it hard.
But it's an amazing, amazing book. Highly, highly recommend it to people.
I'm
Listening
both.
to it,
I'm scared of sharks and I surf, and so it doesn't make
feels
it
in
very
line with your
enjoyable.
I have like a
personality.
zero. There's no evidence-based way for me to approach my fear of sharks. It's just I'm afraid of sharks. And like, I go in the water, and especially if the water's murky, I'm like, hell no. I don't know what's down there.
Nope. Well, movies and shit like that. Didn't help
I'll take the
fear.
surfer mentality, but just like approach life that way. I'm not gonna actually do the thing.
That's right. We've got a couple of power questions.
Start and finish with it. All right.
Yeah. So you made this pretty intentional change to just alter your relationship with alcohol, which is, I think, what we're really always trying to get people to think about, not necessarily promoting a full removal unless that's what's right for you. So, but what would you say are sort of the top 3 things that have come out of that for you, that change?
Better sleep, like way better sleep. I mean, completely changed my sleep. And I think as a result, like my focus during the days, my energy during the days, that's been a huge, huge benefit. I mean, and I tracked that. So I actually had data to prove that it was, a dramatic impact. But like two glasses of whiskey in the evening is going to make you sleep like shit that night. So that was a huge one. It has made me enjoy and appreciate the drink I do have so much more than I did before.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's
It's
like the idea of like, if you eat dessert every single night, you eat cake every single night, none of that cake feels particularly special or interesting to you. It's like in Madeline, like you're like making the kid eat the chocolate cake, and he's like sitting there and he's like stuffing his face and he's crying and stuff like that. That's literally that. But for me with alcohol, I was like, I never really appreciated the taste or the enjoyment or the experience because I was doing it so frequently. And so now, when I sit down with a friend for dinner and we share a nice glass of wine together, I'm like really invested in the experience. I feel like the smells, like everything about it, I feel like I'm more in tune to and I'm really present with. And so that's been a big one for me. I think that's a great thing for me personally.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's a good one. We haven't gotten that one very much.
No, I like that.
Makes a lot of sense. All right, so final question. Sahil Bloom, why do you care?
Period.
Question mark.
I want to impact people positively. I used to really want to get rich. Like, that was my thing when I was a kid. I was like, I'm going to have a ton of money because, like, my parents were both like academics and we were middle class, but we weren't rich. And I'd see people that were rich and I was like, man, I'm going to do that. I want to make a lot of money. That looks sick. And somewhere along the way, I realized there were way too many just like rich yet miserable people out there, way too many, that it wasn't the answer, that I wanted to be happy and feel fulfilled. And for me, that comes from impacting people. When I hear, I write this newsletter every week and it goes to about 150,000 people now, which is blowing me away. And I get responses to it from real people. Like, you can reply, if you reply to it, it goes to my email inbox of how these things that I'm writing from my desk in New York are impacting a kid in India who's like, will write back like, hey, this thing impacted the way I thought about this. I ended up getting my first job, whatever it is. And that blows my freaking mind that I can sit and write something, think about something and share it, and it'll impact someone positively, hopefully. And so that to me is like how I derive fulfillment. That's why I care. And that's why I do what I do, is I think I can impact people. And hopefully that's my family positively, and I can take care of my family as a result of these things. But if I can impact millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of lives over the course of my life, 1 billion lives. I mean, holy hell. That seems like a life well lived. So
yeah, maybe a little money comes along with that.
Maybe. More money comes along when you're not focused
when you're not
on
looking
money.
for it. Exactly.
I will tell you that. I've definitely found that to be true. When I was chasing money, I had some, and things were like okay. But now that I'm not chasing money, you actually end up making more money.
Right.
It's like the paradox of money or something like that. I should write about that.
Write about that.
Yeah.
When you're chasing the thing, you don't find it.
Yeah.
It's like a broader metaphor for life.
Yeah. Sahil Bloom, ladies and gentlemen. The information and opinions shared on this podcast are solely those of the hosts and guests and are not a substitute for medical advice. If you feel like you may need professional help, here are some resources. For the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration hotline, call 1-800-662-4357 or visit smsa.gov. For listeners in the Charlotte, North Carolina community, visit dilworthcenter.org or call 704-372-6969 or visit theblanchardinstitute.com or call 704-288-1097.